This is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the first podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Featuring insight from Arkansas baseball color analyst Bubba Carpenter. Here's Matt Jones.
We're in Omaha. Arkansas is at the College World Series. The Razorbacks at the pinnacle event of college baseball, right where everybody expected them to be at the end of the season. Took a different route to get here than I think most people would have expected. Had to go on the road, one in Stillwater, one in Chapel Hill last week. But they're here. They're going to play Stanford on Saturday at 1 o'clock on ESPN. That'll be their first game at the World Series. They're guaranteed to play at least two games. They'll play either Ole Miss or Auburn on Monday night, and then we'll see how the chips fall after that. Matt Jones with Bubba Carpenter. And Bubba, the World Series, it's where you expect to be at the end of the year, at least where you hope to be. And we'll see how this goes the next couple of weeks. But Arkansas, I think the season is successful just by getting to this point in Omaha, and whatever happens after this just makes all that more successful.
Absolutely, Matt. And Norm DeBrine, then Dave Van Horn, they've kind of built a monster where, for Arkansas fans, it's Omaha or bust. If we don't get to Omaha, it's a bad year. Now, last year was disappointing, without a doubt. We're number one all year. The team was dominant. Everyone just saw us going to Omaha and winning it. This year it's been a different road. We started out good. We faltered a little bit, kind of got it back, got our swagger back, lost it again towards the end of the year. And a lot of people wrote this team off. And I really think the fact that all that negativity kind of, these guys kind of had a chip on their shoulder, and boy, they finished the season strong. They've rallied together, and to end up in Omaha is just amazing accomplishment for these guys. And man, I'm proud of the way they've rallied together and made it happen.
The last 2 weeks I thought have been the best that they've looked all season, given the competition that they've played. Oklahoma State, North Carolina, of course, were national seeds playing on their home field. I thought that the best 2 week stretch for Arkansas before this, and I thought this during the regular season, was when they beat Ole Miss for 2 out of 3 games in Fayetteville, and then they went to Auburn and won 2 out of 3. And those wins have really been magnified because of the way that Ole Miss and Auburn have played in the postseason. Not only have they won, but my gosh, I think both of them have outscored their opponents by 35 runs in their run to the College World Series. But these last 2 weeks, when you look at it on the heels of what happened, at the end of the Vanderbilt series, what happened in Alabama, both in Tuscaloosa and at the SEC tournament, how do you explain what's happened the last 2 weeks with this team and just kind of the turnaround that they've had? Because they look like a completely different team than they did a couple, 3 weeks ago in Alabama.
I think a lot of it, Matt, is just, a little bit of its frustration. It's the game of baseball. Boy, you can go from so high to so low in a matter of minutes. And I think this team being on the road was really important for them. And I usually say just the opposite. Getting back to Baum Walker, getting back here to a regular routine is usually the medicine that we need. But I think this team was just the opposite. I think this team getting on the road, when you're a baseball team and you're at home, you have your routine, and it's real important. Baseball players are creatures of habits, but you've got your things that you do. You've cliques that you're with. Everyone has their people they hang out with. But when you go on the road, it's you and your teammates. And so you really get a chance to bond and be with your team. And I think that's something that's really changed in this team. I feel like they've really come together all this time on the road, because they've been on the road a lot the last month.
Yes, they have. Especially
these last few weeks. I feel like they've really come together and kind of bonded. And you can see their play on the field. They're playing as a team. They're not playing as 9 individuals out on the field. They're playing Razorback baseball. They're playing as a team. Their defense is communicating. Their pitching staff's doing a job. Their hitters 1 through 9 are doing the little things. If they've got to move a runner over, they're getting it over. When they get a runner at third base, less than 2 outs, they're finding a way to get him in. And boy, it's a beautiful thing to see. And it's what I call Razorback baseball, and it's Dave Van Horn baseball, and it's winning baseball. And you can see it coming together right now at the right time.
Just to give you a feel for how long Arkansas has been on the road, they were in Alabama together for 10 days. They went to Tuscaloosa the night before that Thursday, Friday, Saturday series began. Then they bust over to Hoover after that series ended. They were in Hoover for another week. Then they were in Stillwater, I believe, for 5 days. They were in Chapel Hill for 5 days. And they could be here at the College World Series together, Bubba, for I think up to 15 or 16 days. This is mean, you talk about bonding time. You can't get more bonding time than what they're getting.
Boy, I hear you. That's a lot right there. But I think it's good for this guy. And I think they realize, Matt, this is a veteran team, and they realize, hey, when this is over, we're gone. Some guys are going to go on to play some professional baseball, some aren't. But a lot of these guys, if you look at this lineup, I mean, technically, they're all gone. I mean, realistically, except Peyton Stovall is about the only one out of the starting 9 coming back. And I think these guys know that. And I think it was real telling what Jalen Battles said to Slavens. Hey, something to the effect before that at bat, hey, this is what we came back for. And I think they feel that. And they're like, hey, we came back for this reason. We could be playing professional baseball right now. We came back on a mission. We want to go back to Omaha. They didn't like the way that felt, being left out on the field at Baum Walker last year, NC State going on to the College World Series. I think that they still feel that, and they're on a mission right now. And boy, you take a Razorback team on a mission like this, and that's a dangerous team that I wouldn't want to face.
How poetic was it that they beat North Carolina to get to the College World Series after losing to North Carolina State last year, and they do it, maybe 30 miles from NC State's ballpark. They're in the Triangle area, in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area. Let's talk about the North Carolina series. Arkansas wins those games 4-1 and 4-3. They get great starting pitching from Conor Nolan and Will McIntyre. And I want to talk more about starting pitching here in a minute. But I want to talk about the second game of that super regional, because they fall behind 3-2 in the top of the 9th inning. And, the feeling in the ballpark is that, hey, we might be going to game 3. And then they come in the bottom of the 9th. And I thought that was one of the best sequences of at-bats that they've had all season long, given the moment, given what had happened the inning before, given who was on the mound. Davis Palermo, a really good all-ACC pitcher for North Carolina. They get singles some from the bottom of the order, and then they bring the top of the order up, and things just happen for them, and they win that game. And that was a tough game too, Bubba, because there'd been all of those delays, and I think the game ended something like 6 hours and 20 minutes after it began. I mean, you talk about a gritty, tough victory on the road. I can't think of any that have been better than that one this year.
I don't think so, Matt. And, if you really want to unpack, there's so much to unpack when you start talking about that game. Just so many incredible things that happened. First of all, it's one thing if you're in a rain delay and it's pouring down rain, but I know these guys are frustrated. And look, I get the whole lightning thing, but we're in an hour and 50-minute delay where the sun's out. And it never rained, and then we start the game. Then we have another rain delay at, I don't even know what it was, an hour, close to an hour
8. Yeah,
hour and 8. And once again, it's beautiful skies. It is blue skies, and I've got multiple weather apps because I hunt, and so I'm looking at my weather apps, and man, it's past us. It's gone, and I get it. Safety first. You don't want a lightning strike. I mean, I get all that, but I think anyway, I was frustrated, and I'm sure the guys in the dugout were frustrated, or wherever they were at. They really didn't have a place to go. But I think we just outlasted North Carolina, and just the mental toughness of this team really showed through. And look, and I really want to talk about some of the stuff that happened in those last couple of innings. We give up the lead. We go into the 9th inning. Jalen Battles leads off of the base hit, kind of off the third baseman's glove, glanced off of his glove to the shortstop. He could have had a play, couldn't get a handle on it. But then Peyton Stovall came up huge. That line drive to right center to make runners at first and third with nobody out was giant right there. But what pumped me up more than anything, Matt, is when I saw Kendall Diggs come out on deck, and I said it on the air. I said, hey, Dave's playing for the win right here. He's not playing for the tie. It'd have been the easy move right there. Traditional theory, as you know, is when you're playing if you're the road team, you play for the win. When you're the home team, you play for the tie. Dave could have done a safety squeeze right there. You got Peyton Stovall at third. You got Zach Gregory, a really good bunter up. He could have easily bunted, got the tie and run in, moved the winning run to second with one out. Dave went for the win with going with Kendall Diggs right there. And as soon as I saw him grab a bat on deck, I said it. I'm like, yes, he's going for the win. And I loved it. And I think that pumped up those players as well. And, Kendall Diggs, a huge at bat. Braden Webb hits a ball hard to the left side. knocks in a tie and run. And then as soon as Brady Slavens took that first pitch slider, I said, we got this. I just knew it. And you can second guess everything. Scott Forbes, how does he handle that? He brings the defense in. And as soon as he brought the defense in, I'm like, wow, that's a huge surprise. I was happy he brought everyone in because Brady hits a lot of hard ground balls to the right side. A lot of guys would have played corners in, middle back, play for the double play because Brady can hit into a double play because he hits the ball hard. There was just a lot of things that happened that last inning where you say, wow, Dave could have played for the tie. Forbes could have played his middle back. If he plays his middle infield back, you know where that ground ball goes, Matt? It goes right to their second baseman. Mm-hmm. It was right at him. And he wasn't the starting second baseman, but he'd already made a good turn early in the game when he came in. And so there's just so much stuff that happened that inning. That's just awesome. And it's why I love baseball. It's why I live it every day. I talk about it every day because there's just so many things. And I hope people that don't understand the game look at things like that and they're like, wow, and they really appreciate everything that happened in that one inning that makes baseball so freaking awesome. And it makes Razorback baseball even more awesome. So it was exciting.
Well, and I think about a couple of things. Number one, that Battle scores the game tying run and he has that piece of motivation, and he was the guy who grounded out to end the game against North Carolina State last year. I thought that was kind of an interesting moment, or an interesting set of events. And then for Slavens, it didn't dawn on me until I went back and watched some replays. He had that little line drive in the seventh that Vance Honeycutt came and made the diving catch on. Otherwise, that would have given Arkansas the lead in the seventh inning. And, who knows how the game plays out after that. And so it was kind of a neat deal for him to get a little bit of redemption after Honeycutt had taken away a go-ahead hit for him a couple of innings earlier.
Yeah, you're right. He didn't hit it hard. It was just a little blooper to center. But, hey, I tell you what, that Honeycutt is the real deal out there. He was playing really shallow. Phenomenal. I was surprised to see him that shallow in that situation with Brady Slavens up. But hey, made a tremendous play. Got a great jump on that ball. When a guy like Brady swings the bat, he swings it. He doesn't get cheated. So for him to read that was a jam shot and come in on the ball instantly like he did, that's a great read by a center fielder. And, and then look at the next inning. Soretti, a great play on Robert Moore's ground ball to turn two. Mm-hmm. I never thought he had a chance to turn two on that. That was a remarkable play. That ball, I thought when Robert hit it, it was up the middle. He hit it hard. But, they made some good plays. It was just it was a well-played game. I love Scott Forbes. I love what he said after the game about, hey, I feel like when I look across the field, I'm looking at our team because I appreciate the way the Razorbacks play the game, the way they hustle out ground balls, the way they hit a home run and they run around the bases. They don't run their mouths. I loved everything Scott Forbes said in his post-game interview, just classy. And it just pumped me up to hear a coach recognize that. And I loved the way North Carolina played the game. I really do. And I said at the end, I said, it's kind of heartbreaking to see those guys lined up along that fence right there, watching the Razorbacks celebrate. But then I remember last year what our guys had to go through, with NC State. And so, that's baseball. But hey, they really are a good team. And I love the way North Carolina played. And we just got a couple of big hits and made some big pitches when we need to. And we're going to Omaha.
Dave Van Horn offered this up after the game. He wasn't asked about it. He offered it up. He said that this win is made so much more special by the way last season ended. And, I haven't thought a whole lot about the way last season ended, but in listening to him talk, and then, you begin a line of questioning to the players after you hear him say that, the players who came back from that team, and you hear Brady Slavens talk about what Battles told him before his at bat. It became pretty obvious after that game that this was all about getting, I don't know if revenge is the right word, retribution for what happened last year against NC State. And, I guess I'd kind of, you get so lost in what's going on in the season that you don't think about that kind of stuff anymore. But I think that's been in the back of these players' minds for a long time when you see it come out the way that it did after they beat North Carolina the other day. That's been a huge motivating factor that I think probably has flown under the radar a little bit.
No, I think you're right. And, I get to be around the players. You get to be around them and interview them and talk to them. I love these guys. I really do. Those guys in the dugout. And I was crushed for them last year watching them having to watch North Carolina State celebrate on our field. I mean, it was tough. And I remember looking down in the dugout and your heart just breaks for those guys because you know how hard they work all year and their goal is Omaha. Yeah, you want to win the SEC West, and SEC tournament, yeah, whatever. You remember how it looked last year, and so for these guys to come back in North Carolina and finish it off like they did with a chance to go to Omaha. I mean, it's beautiful. You couldn't have scripted it any better. I guess the only way you could have possibly scripted it better had it been on NC State's field, but it's remarkable what they've done in the turnaround, and just super proud of these guys.
And then for it to happen too, Bubba, on the same afternoon, within a couple of hours of Tennessee losing the game to Notre Dame, that such a similar situation for Tennessee. I know the sequence of wins and losses was not the same, but it felt like a very similar deal watching that game in the press box as we're watching Arkansas and North Carolina on the field, or maybe it was during a rain delay. I can't remember a lightning delay during that game, but it was the same feeling watching those Tennessee players just in complete and utter shock that this great season that they had comes to such an abrupt end. And so to see Arkansas win that as Tennessee's going through what it's going through, I thought that made it even more maybe ironic is the right word.
I think you're right. And I don't know if you remember, Matt, I want to say it was like a ball three that Evan Taylor threw, or Brady. I can't remember who was on the mound. There's so much going on.
It was Brady Tigert. You're talking about the pitch that made it 3-1 and they called the players off the field.
Well, no, I was talking about the cheer from the Razorback fans.
Yeah.
So
I heard a "Let's Go Irish" cheer out in the stadium.
Well, I've got headsets on, so it's hard for me to hear the crowd. And I heard something get really loud. It was after one of our guys threw a ball, and all of a sudden the Razorback fans erupted, and I'm like, oh, I knew what that meant. Tennessee just got beat. And then boom, 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 my phone starts blowing up. And I'm like, yes, now let's win this thing. The only thing better than Tennessee losing would be us winning this one. So I think it worked out awesome. And, I don't even want to get into the whole Tennessee, stuff, but, good baseball wins. And that's what happened.
We'll talk a little bit more about Tennessee and the SEC report later. Starting pitching, Bubba. It's obvious Hagen Smith's not a starter anymore. They like him at the back end of games. We'll see what happens with Jackson Wiggins, but he hasn't started since he had that tough outing against Oklahoma State and Stillwater. Not that he would have started a game in Chapel Hill anyway, because they played a couple of games. But it seems to me right now that obviously Conor Nolan's your number one starter, and it's been really great for Arkansas to see him bounce back the last couple of weeks and pitch kind of at that mid-season level that he was at. And Will McIntyre. And I think that Will McIntyre might be their number two starter right now. And, maybe it changes depending on matchups, what they see here in Omaha. But I thought one of the things that made McIntyre kind of a no-brainer against North Carolina was that he's kind of a similar pitcher to what Conor Nolan is. And so they had struggled against Conor Nolan the day before. So you bring McIntyre out, who's kind of, similar, doesn't throw all the same pitches, but just in terms of he's not going to, overwhelm you with the velocity. He's going to beat you with his off-speed pitches. And between those two, they shut North Carolina down for 12 and a third innings, didn't allow a run. And that's as good a back-to-back starts as we've seen from Arkansas pitching in quite some time.
Oh, it was awesome. And I think it was great that they went with Will McIntyre for that exact reason. You look at Conor Nolan, I want to say Conor gave up 6 hits. All 6 of them were on fastballs. They were hunting the fastball and trying to lay off the breaking ball, when they could, but then they had a hard time with 2 strikes. Conor was able to put them away with that breaking ball. And Will does a lot of the same thing. He just misses barrels. He's got that slider. He's got that little cutter, and he can miss barrels with those pitches. They start out a strike, end up a ball just off the plate or just on the outside corner, just enough to miss that barrel. And boy, they really did had the Carolina hitters kind of baffled, to be honest with you. So that was a really good choice. Will came up huge in that game, and even after the long rain delay, to come back out and did what McIntyre did after an hour and 50 minutes or whatever was pretty special. That's hard to do. And so, I thought he did a great job. And then, it's frustrating because the delays really, I think it hurt us more than it hurt North Carolina because, we had Brady Tigert on the mound. We lost him after that second delay, and had to go to Hagen Smith. Well, it worked out great for us, but, that could have been a huge factor in that game. The fact that second delay cost us Brady Tigert. The North Carolina came back with Palermo, and he wasn't quite as sharp. He wasn't 95, 96 like he was before the delay. Still had good stuff, though. He was still 93, 94. But it was good to see us because that's it really comes down to mental, just mental toughness to sit through those delays and be able to flip that switch back on when it's game time and get it done.
I thought the biggest play of the Super Regional was the bottom of the first inning. The ball goes off Conor Nolan. I mean, he's like a magnet right now with those line drives going off him. Picks it up, bases are loaded. They'd hit him pretty well in that first inning. Even some balls that were hit foul. But he picks it up, throws the guy out at first, just like we'd seen him do in Stillwater the week before. And they don't get a run there in the first inning. And from that point on, he shut that offense down, went to more, first pitch, off-speed pitches. I thought the defense that he showed there in the first inning was really pivotal to the way that Super Regional ended up playing out.
That's right. And they say pitchers aren't athletes. What are they talking about? Conor Nolan's a really good athlete out there on the mound. And you're right. If that ball gets through, we might not be having this conversation right now. Everything could have played out differently. And that's the crazy thing about baseball. But for him to recover, come get that ball, pick it up, and make a perfect throw to Peyton Stovall, there's not a lot of other pitchers in the country that can make that play. I promise you, that's a really tough play, and it really did. It changed the whole game, and even though that's in the first inning. And what's crazy is we talk about the weekend before in Stillwater, the play that Caden Wallace made in the second inning changed that game.
Yep.
If Caden doesn't make that play, we may not be here talking right now, Matt. And so it's so good. I mean, just the defense has been spectacular for us the last few weeks. And I love the fact that we're going into Omaha with the best defense in the country. It doesn't say it statistically, but in my mind, we're the best defense in the country right now.
I was walking into the ballpark in Chapel Hill on Sunday with Will McIntyre's dad, and he made just kind of an off-cuff comment to me. He said, Will had a start out here in North Carolina about 5 years ago playing American Legion ball in Shelby, North Carolina. He said it was probably the best game that he ever pitched before college. Had a 3-hit shutout in a game that sent his American Legion team from Bryant to the semifinals of the American Legion World Series that they play in Shelby, North Carolina. And I said, well, if he pitches well today, I'm gonna follow up on this. So I got a chance to follow up on that, and just kind of really interesting all the parallels that there were between that start that he had in the American Legion World Series that he had in Chapel Hill, number one, that was in North Carolina. Whenever he pitched in the American Legion World Series, it was against a team from just up the road, from about 30 miles away from Shelby. He had a real hostile crowd. I think his dad said there were about 8,000 people in the stands, and all but about 200 were cheering on the other team. It was a huge moment in the season, and when you kind of go back and you talk to Will McIntyre's old coaches and his dad and people who saw him growing up, the common theme comes back is that whenever there's a big game, he pitches really well. Apparently, whenever he was in American Legion ball, Bubba, his nickname was Big Game Mac. And that's what we've seen from him the last couple of weeks, whether it was be in a relief outing against Oklahoma State or in the start against North Carolina. He's pitched really well in really critical moments for this team. And when you think about where he was 2 months ago, it's just an incredible way that his season's unfolded.
Yeah, I think so. You know what I like about him? He doesn't talk a whole lot, but when he gets out there on the mound, he looks like a guy that's just got fire in his eyes. I mean, he looks like he's ready to go. Let's just put it that way. He's not real vocal, not real emotional, but boy, he steps up on that mound and he looks like he's ready to get after you. And I like that. Boy, I love that in a guy. I love his makeup out there on the mound. Even though he's not like a real emotional rah-rah guy, he lets his pitching do the talking, and that's what I love.
What do you think's been the key to Hagen Smith being in the bullpen and the way that it looks like it's changed him as a pitcher? A lot of times we've seen him this year where when he's starting, he struggles with his command early in games, and it's like he's got to get through that first inning or those first 2 innings before he settles in. Doesn't look like he's struggling with that when he comes out of the bullpen. Do you think this is a I hear coaches talk a lot about situations with pitchers who, when they're a starter, they just kind of overthink it too much because they're having to sleep on it for a night, 2 nights before they start, as opposed to a reliever that just kind of has to react. By the time you're called up and you're out on the mound, it might only be 5 or 10 minutes. Do you think that might be something that's going on with him? What do you see from him in a relief role that's made him as effective as he's been the last couple of weeks?
I don't know. I tell you, the one thing he's done, he's slowed things down a little bit, and he's kind of embracing that role. Like we talked last week about Oklahoma State and Stillwater when he came in, the bases loaded, one out, and I believe it was Atkinson, their catcher, up. The crowd was going crazy. I mean, it was a crazy moment, hostile on the road. He stepped out and he walked kind of around the mound, almost a complete circle around the mound, and looked up in the stands and saw the chaos. And it's almost like he gathered all that insurance, all that energy up, and then just blew 3 fastballs by him. And then he did the same when Rock Riggio came up, took his time, stepped off, kind of embraced everything that was going on, took it in. And I think that just like gave him energy. It's crazy. And then he bowed up and blew Rock Riggio away, which was one of the highlights of my career or season. And I don't know. I just think it's awesome. I think he just really likes that role. I think he can come in and just air it out for an inning or for 2 innings or whatever they need. And whether it's not as much game planning or I don't know what it is. I just feel like he can go out there and just cut it loose and let that ball eat, for however many batters they need to get out. And he just looks different on the mound to me. The one thing I have noticed though is he slows things down a little bit, takes a little more time, a little more deliberate with his pitches.
I want to get your thoughts on the lineup real quick. They're getting contribution from a lot of players, but the one that really stands out to me is Peyton Stovall. I think after that hit he had the other day against North Carolina, I think he's 12 for 24 in the postseason. I mean, this is the type of play that people were expecting from Peyton Stovall all year, and I've heard Dave Van Horn talk about this, and I can't agree with him more. Like I saw before the season when D1 Baseball is picking him to be the National Freshman of the Year. I mean, you talk about pressure and expectations that are put on somebody before you've ever seen him play. I never quite understood that. And it's the first time I've ever seen a National Freshman of the Year named in the preseason. It almost seems though like maybe that time that he took off in late April when he had the finger injury, and then he didn't get back into the lineup until Borfin and Diggs started to struggle a little bit. It's like that time off maybe refocused him a little bit, and he sure is playing really well right now for them and giving them a big bat at the bottom of the lineup.
Oh, absolutely. Plus he made a couple big plays on defense.
Yes, he did in each game. Yeah.
Yeah. That really, I mean, those were game changers. If those balls get by him, one ended up in a double play, and it was a tough turn. He had to throw right over that runner's back. Jalen Battles did a great job of fielding that ball because it went right over the base runner's left shoulder. It was a tough play, but that was a huge play in the game. But back to his offense, there is a lot of pressure, and you take a guy like Peyton Stovall, you haven't had a lot of failure. I mean, he's been good from probably the time he started playing youth baseball. He's been good. So I doubt that he's ever had the struggles that he had here. You come in as a freshman, you're leading off for the Arkansas Razorback, one of the top teams in the country. There's a lot of pressure there. I think what Dave did, he had the finger injury. He set out a couple of days. He probably could have been back in the lineup. Dave set him out a few more days. And I think that was huge because when you sit back, Matt, the game slows down. When you're sitting there in the dugout watching things, you're like, wow, all right. It's kind of, I equate it to if you're up at the plate and the coach gives you the 3-0 take sign. A guy throwing 95 looks like 75. That pitch just floats up to the plate because you're relaxed. Your eyes are relaxed. You're able to slow stuff down. And I think that's what Peyton Stovall did when he was out of the lineup. And he's been huge coming back in. I'll tell you, for a freshman, here's what I really like. In the game, in game 2 in North Carolina, his first at bat, he got 3 fastballs blown by him. Just boom, 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 3 fastballs blown by him. What does he do his next at bat? He goes up to the plate in the 5th inning, gets a first pitch fastball, which was up in the zone, and hammers it to right field for a home run. That's a freshman making a huge adjustment right there. And that was big at the time, put us on the board. kind of changed the momentum in our direction. And so, proud of the way he's been playing, and he's laying off pitches. I said all along, I'm not always right, but I one thing I'm really good at, Matt, is evaluating hitters. From his first day, I love the way he took pitches. When he was hitting 100, I said, hey, this kid's going to hit, because I love the way he takes a pitch. Good hitters take pitches different than bad hitters. And Peyton was taking pitches the right way. He just wasn't getting hits. Then he started pressing a little bit. But boy, he's come out of it now, and, just doing a great job. Down in our lineup, he's a guy that's getting on base, driving in runs, a lot of 2-out, 2-strike hits, which I love. That's just a dagger to the other team. So it's good to see him coming around right here at the right time.
And if you're superstitious, he's taking really good batting practice, and he's doing it with a number 57 batting top. And it's because he left his batting jersey in Alabama. And so now he's, and I think even if they could get that number 10 batting top back, Bubba, they're not going to get it back, because he's been taking such good BP with this number 57 top, and he's 12 for 24.
Okay, well, I got to tell you a funny story. So I walk out, it was in Stillwater. I walk out there and I'm talking to Matt Hobbs and leaning over the dugout. The idiot grounds crew in Stillwater had parked the Gator right in our way, so you couldn't hardly see. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, 57. I said, that guy, who is that? And I thought maybe it was one of the pitchers came in and taken BP, and I couldn't recognize his back was to us. I'm like, that dude rakes. I said, that is a good swing. And I asked Kyle, I said, who is that? And he goes, that's Stovall. And then when he walked out of the cage, I mean, I just, it just caught me off guard. So I went and told Peyton that story by the cages. I'm like, dude, I saw this dude hit with 57 jersey. I'm like, this guy rakes. Where's he been all year? And so it ended up being Peyton. And so we kind of laughed about that. But yeah, it is kind of funny. And hey, I hope he doesn't find that old jersey, because I want him to keep wearing that 57 BP jersey.
Kind of reminds me of like when the baseball team in 2018 got their white and red jerseys washed together down at Georgia, and it turned them pink. And they only had 2 jerseys the rest of the year, and they almost won the national championship. Maybe this wardrobe malfunction will work in their favor. Hey, speaking of grounds crew, you know how you're in North Carolina. Did you notice the Gator on the field in Chapel Hill had an Earnhardt sticker on it?
No, I did not notice that.
It had a number 3 Earnhardt sticker on it. So that's, I knew I was in North Carolina at that point. Hey, real quick, I want to talk about the difference between the way they won the regional in Stillwater and the way that they won the super regional in Chapel Hill. And I think that this is the mark of a well-balanced team. When they were in Stillwater, they were playing in an environment where the ball was flying out of that ballpark, and they had to win some high-scoring games against a really good offensive team from Oklahoma State. North Carolina, they're a good offensive team too. Arkansas held them in check, though. Those games in Chapel Hill, they turned into pitching and defense games, and Arkansas was able to, beat them in that style too. I think that's a sign of a team that, it doesn't really matter how the game is going to go. They're going to be able to be in that game based on the way that they played the last couple of weeks.
Oh, absolutely, Matt. I think it's awesome. And they kind of adapt to their environment. And once again, that's something that good teams do. And I think that starts with the coaching staff and the preparation. And then, ultimately it's the guys on the field having to execute, but they take advantage of the situation that's in front of them that day. Your cliches, take it day by day, game by game. Well, it's so true, because there's a difference when the wind's blowing out in Stillwater and the ball's flying out. The game's a little different than if you're playing in Chapel Hill. The air's kind of heavy. The ball's really not carrying. It's just a different style of baseball. And boy, we're able to adapt to those two things. And I think that's really beneficial for us going into Charles Schwab Stadium, because it's a big yard. And if that wind's blowing in, I mean, you've got to make adjustments pitching wise and at the plate to adjust to that big field.
You said Charles Schwab Field. I'm going to have to get used to that. I'm still used to TD Ameritrade Park. I'm going to have to get used to that this week here in Omaha.
I'm still used to Rosenblatt. To me, it's still, I still hear the images of Rosenblatt Stadium.
That's kind of old school right there, Bubba. That was
way old school.
This is my 6th College World Series to cover. I only covered 1 over at Rosenblatt. I'm more used to the ballpark downtown. Hey, I knew it was a good sign when I got to Omaha. Well, first off, it was 2 a.m. when I got here, so I don't really remember a whole lot about pulling in. But when I woke up, looked out my window, and there was a Massage Envy right across the street from the hotel. So I thought maybe that was a good sign. All year, Massage Envy has been our sponsor here of the Whole Hog Baseball podcast. Voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. You can visit Mike and his staff back in Northwest Arkansas at Tuscany Square, 2603 West Pleasant Grove Road in Rogers, or in Fayetteville at 3557 North Shiloh Drive. Massage Envy has services for everyone. MassageEnvy.com.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
You know, it never goes out of style, a great burger. And for a long time now, the best burgers around have been made at CJ's Butcher Boy. I've been stopping at their Russellville location for years to enjoy a double with bacon, cheese, and all the fixins. Well, the fries are always made fresh, and their shakes are made with real premium ice cream. And now that CJ's Butcher Boy has a Fayetteville location, too, on Weddington, you can bet I'll be there a lot more. CJ's Butcher Boy in Russellville and Fayetteville. When all you do are burgers, they have to be the best.
Welcome back to the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. Now let's look at this week in the SEC, presented by CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers.
I don't know if we're in Omaha or if we're in Hoover this week, Bubba. It feels like the SEC tournament over when you think about you've got Arkansas here, Auburn, Ole Miss. They're all on the same side of the bracket. Got Texas A&M on the other side of the bracket. And then, you know, and you start talking about the long-term health of the SEC. Texas and OU are here too. I mean, this looks like a 2026 baseball weekend once the Longhorns and the Sooners get into the SEC. Just incredible, the SEC flair that's here at Omaha this week.
Well, isn't it funny, though? I thought the SEC West was really down this year, Matt, and it's kind of funny to see four teams out of the SEC
We've
West.
fought back against that narrative all year, haven't we?
We have. Every week you and I talk about it. But, you know, I think it's good to see, you know, I say all the time, cream rises to the top. But you look, there's four teams out of the SEC West in the College World Series, and then you throw in Texas and OU. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be fun times in the SEC down the road.
Texas A&M and OU will start the World Series on Friday afternoon. Texas will play Notre Dame Friday night. You've got Arkansas and Stanford at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and then the Saturday night game is going to be Ole Miss and Auburn. The SEC West wasn't down. I wanted to touch about this just a little bit. You know, you had LSU that played really well. I mean, the LSU could be standing where Ole Miss is right now. Had LSU made just a couple more plays and beaten Southern Miss and Hattiesburg. But Ole Miss gets to go down there. They win that super regional. They're here. You know, I just thought all year that the SEC West down narrative had to do with the fact that Mississippi State wasn't playing up to its level of expectations. And it took a little while for Ole Miss to get to that point. But you know, we saw this with Ole Miss toward the end of the season. We thought that they looked really good when they came to Fayetteville. And then, you know, you look at what they did when they left. They went and they swept LSU. They played Texas A&M really competitively at the end of the season. This has turned into a really good Ole Miss team. I think getting Graham back in their lineup was a real big key for them. And then, you know, we talked earlier in the season about all the pitching that they lost from last season's team. I think like over 50% of their innings last year they lost. And it's just taken a little while. And, you know, to Mike Bianco's credit, he's a really good pitching coach. He's got these younger pitchers now pitching at a high level. I think some of it had to do with the fact that they got a good draw in the regional. I didn't think Miami was a very strong national seed. Arizona was not your typical 2 seed. And then they got to go down to Southern Miss and beat a team that they'd beaten up late in the season. But the SEC West it was really good this year, Bubba. And I think that it really only in the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks have people really understood that Texas A&M and Auburn have been very suitable replacements for what Mississippi State and Ole Miss have been the last few years.
Oh, I think so. And look, I still remember Ole Miss coming into Fayetteville, and I want to say at the time they were like 6-12 in the conference. And I looked at them and I'm like, how in the world is this team 6-12? Look at this lineup. I mean, they've got a veteran lineup led by Tim Elko. And I think it helps. You got to, as a team, you need that leader. You need that leader, and that's Tim Elko. And I think he demonstrated that, when he went through everything with his knee and playing through that, which was amazing to me. He became, believe it or not, one of my favorite players because I know how hard that was to play through what he did. And I'm saying that about an Ole Miss team, and I can't stand Ole Miss.
I can't believe the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Well, I really appreciate a gutsy leader, a guy that plays like that, because I know he was in pain. It'd have been real easy to shut it down, get the surgery, and not play out the rest of the season. But he did it for his team, and I know it was hard on him. And so, man, to me, that's impressive. That's really impressive. I just wish he wasn't wearing an Ole Miss uniform. But I said when they came in, this is a good team. And then you and I also talked about when the regionals were announced and they got in, I said I wouldn't want to be in that regional with Ole Miss coming to town because they're a dangerous team. And Bianco's done a good job. He's kind of taken some guys out of the bullpen, and now he's got them in starting roles, and they're actually doing really, really well for him. And then I think it helps that their offense is scoring a lot of runs now. I think it takes some pressure off the pitching staff, and so they're a good team.
You're going to be mad that I'm even going to put this negative thought in your head, but if Arkansas loses to Ole Miss in Omaha, am I going to have to drive you home?
Oh my gosh, my poor wife. It's going to be bad. Yeah. So, she's not going to want to be in the car with me on the way home. Let's don't even think about that, Matt.
It's just amazing the way that, they played in the Super Regional in 2019. They've had such big games, and now there's the potential for them to play here in Omaha. Just, you talk about rivalries and building rivalries, and I think it's a little bit different with Arkansas baseball because they've been so good that there's a lot of teams that want to beat them a lot, and I think that rivalries are made when you play really meaningful games against teams. And you think about Ole Miss in 2019 in that Super Regional, potentially playing them here in Omaha. There's not really a rivalry that I think stands above Ole Miss from the Arkansas standpoint. There might be some that are kind of equal, but I don't think there's any that are above it.
Right. I think so. I think you're right. Now, a chance to beat Texas would be huge. But Ole Miss right now is probably the one. But, when it comes to Arkansas, teams playing Arkansas, teams want to beat you for two reasons. Like Tennessee, people want to beat Tennessee because of the crap that they do on the field, the way they play the game, the way they run their mouths. It makes you want to beat them worse. Teams want to beat Arkansas because if you beat an Arkansas team, you're beating a top-notch team that plays the game the right way, and it's a perennial power year in and year out. And so we always have a bullseye on our back. And so I think those are the two different reasons you really want to beat someone, and teams step up when they play the Razorbacks for that reason. And it's, it goes with being one of the best programs in the country.
We said with Tennessee all year that their lack of composure was going to be something that potentially hurt them in the postseason. That, really, and you look at all the coaches who are here that have been here many times, coaches like Jim Schlossnagle and Dave Van Horn and David Pierce, and I could go down the list because there's a lot of coaches that have been here multiple times. David Esker, another one from Stanford. They're all coaches for the most part who there's a composure about them. And there's a composure about their teams that I think, derives from the way that the head coach carries himself. And we've talked about all year that, with Tennessee, if you don't stay composed in the postseason, there's just something about the postseason that can really take it out of you. And I thought the big moment in that series where they lost to Notre Dame is when Drew Gilbert turns around and tells the umpire that he's effing terrible, and he gets thrown out and has to miss the next game. And then Frank Anderson gets ejected. I don't even know what Frank Anderson was doing on the field in that moment. He's the pitching coach coming out arguing about a balls and strikes for a hitter. I just thought that was the turning point in that series. And the fact that Frank Anderson didn't get to coach them the rest of that series, you're talking about a really veteran pitching coach who's really respected, I think, among his peers. You don't have him for the final two games of your super regional, and you don't have him for about the last half of the first game. That was huge moment, and it was because they lost their composure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you gotta, you know, in baseball, you got to be able to control your emotions, play with energy and passion, but you got to control that. I mean, and for a hitter to think he can turn and say that to an umpire, there's a few magic words you don't use when you're talking to an umpire, and obviously that's one of them that he used. I mean, he's got to know he's gone. Now, I think where it really came back to haunt them was you look at game 3. I want to say Tennessee was up 3-1 in the 7th. Frank Anderson calls pitches. He wasn't in that dugout to call pitches. Well, look what happened. Notre Dame comes rallying back and wins running away from them. I think if he's in the dugout, there might be a different pitch calling sequence going on now. Who knows if they have a way for him to – I don't know. To me, it looked like him not being in the dugout was a huge factor right there in game 3, and might be one of the reasons they're not in Omaha right now.
There were a lot of people who felt like Tony Vitello kept Chase Burns in that game for way too long. And Vitello's been a pitching coach before. I don't know if people realize that. He was a pitching coach at Missouri before he went to TCU and transitioned into becoming a hitting coach. But there's a lot of people who think that had he taken Chase Burns out earlier, that maybe that super regional would have gone differently for the Volunteers. CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers are the best in 2 towns, and they're the sponsor of our SEC report. You can visit the original at 2803 North Arkansas Avenue in Russellville, or the newest location at 3484 West Weddington Drive in Fayetteville, just minutes from Baum Walker Stadium. Skip the line and order online or download the app in your app store. CJ's Butcher Boy Burgers. When all you do are burgers, they have to be the best. I think that one of the reasons that you have so many teams from the SEC in Omaha, and it's not just this year, it's many years. I mean, I think you go back to 2015, and 6 of the last 7 World Series have had at least 3 SEC teams here at the College World Series. And I think it all has to do, Bubba, with the way that the SEC season just prepares you for the grind of regionals. You know, a super regional against North Carolina, to me, that doesn't feel a whole lot different than playing Auburn on its home ball or on its home field in early May. It doesn't feel a whole lot different than playing Mississippi State at Baum Stadium in early April. It's almost like you go through 7 or 8 super regionals, I mean, depending on the quality of the team, before you ever get to the postseason. And I think that's one of the big reasons that the SEC always seems to hold its own so well in the tournament. They had 5 teams in the super regionals. They could have very easily had 8 teams in the super regionals. Just another year where the SEC's really flexed its muscles here in the postseason.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. The SEC prepares you for these super regionals. So if you look at the North Carolina game 2, Brandon Schaefer started lefty, kind of a sidearm delivery, kind of a weird look. He kept us off pace a little bit. We had some good at bats against him, but didn't square up a lot of balls. Then they bring their number 1 guy in, Davis Palermo, he's more of an SEC type arm. He's 94, 96, good slider. We looked great against him. I mean, we really did. I mean, it was like we were, okay, now we got the lefty out of there. Now we can face a guy. And that guy, Palermo, dominated this year in the ACC. I mean, he had great numbers. And so I think it's kind of that prepares us for, that regional or that super regional. It's almost like you can take a deep breath and say, okay, now, not that they're not good teams. It's just a different style of baseball. I look at, Alex Williams. They're talking about him I would assume that's who we're going to face against Stanford. And we're probably going to talk about that in a little bit, but
yeah,
Pac-12 pitcher of the year. Well, okay, that's good for you. That's a good season, but put him in the SEC. Would he be the SEC pitcher of the year? Hell no. And so I don't know. I guess I view everything, and maybe I've got goggles on, but SEC without a doubt is the best conference in the country. And to your point, kind of a long-winded way of answering your question. Absolutely. That gets these teams ready for postseason play, because the gauntlet of the SEC is so tough year in and year out.
I heard Dan McConnell, who's Louisville's coach, he didn't say the SEC by name, but he made a comment after they had lost at A&M, a couple of 1-run games in the super regional, that certain leagues get favored over the ACC. And what he's got to be talking about is the SEC there. And I thought it was such a weird comment. I mean, because you look at top 8 national seeds, the SEC got 2, the ACC got 2. You talk about regional hosts, the ACC got 4, the SEC got 4. Total teams in the tournament, the ACC got 9, The SEC got 9. If you're the ACC and you want to show up the SEC, you go beat them head to head, and they haven't done that really. Notre Dame beat Tennessee, and that's a huge win for the ACC. But otherwise, the ACC just hasn't really fared that well in this postseason, at least in terms of being the final 8 teams. Notre Dame's the only ACC team here in Omaha. There's 4 SEC teams left. And last week you had 3 ACC, SEC super regional matchups. Arkansas beats North Carolina, A&M beats Louisville. Mentioned that Notre Dame had the win over Tennessee. Even in the regionals, Ole Miss went down to Miami's home field and won over what was supposed to be a top 8 national seed. I think, the cream rises to the top, and the SEC just seems to rise to the top at this time of year. A much better league, in my opinion, based on what I've seen this postseason, than the ACC.
Right. And there's some good teams in the ACC, but I mean, the scoreboard doesn't lie. I mean, I'm sorry, when you match them up against each other, there's no comparison. The SEC from top to bottom is better. And I don't know how you can possibly question that. I'm sorry. I don't understand what this guy's talking about, but yeah. Oh, well, it's in my mind, there's no comparison.
How tough is the SEC going to be in a few years when Texas and OU get in? I think OU is going to have some troubles in the SEC. They've got to figure out some things with their ballpark because it's really under par based on what they're about to see, from their peers in the SEC. But that's a team that always seems to kind of cycle through every 4 or 5 years and have some good program or some good years within that program. And Texas under David Pierce has really got rolling the last few years. The SEC already the best league in the country, and now you're adding 2 teams that are going to have a World Series appearance within 3 or 4 years of when they get into the conference.
Hey, it's going to be fun, and I don't know what's going to happen with OU. I kind of agree with you. They might scuff a little bit because, I mean, think about it. Right down the road, they've got Oklahoma State. Stillwater just built that brand new stadium, and it's sweet. I mean, it's a good facility. Of course, Oklahoma State's not playing in the SEC, so that might give OU the edge on recruiting right there. But Texas, I wonder if that's going to allow them to pull a few more of those kids away from A&M that A&M's getting right now. Of course, they're both loaded with money, and when you start talking NIL and all that, I don't know. And then you got to wonder, how's that going to affect Arkansas? Because we go into Texas, Nate Thompson, Van Horn, Hobbs, they do a great job of going down into Texas and pulling top players out of there every year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if that changes things on the recruiting side of it.
I think that was one of the big concerns when A&M came into the conference. How would it hurt Arkansas recruiting Dallas and Houston and East Texas? And really hasn't hurt them very much at all. Can you imagine a Friday night in the SEC in 2026 when Texas comes to Baum Walker Stadium?
Hell yeah. I'll be ready to go. And I know all the fans around here, especially all the old fans for sure, that could remember the days. It's funny, a few years ago I talked to Carson Shaddy about it, and he doesn't remember those days, but boy, his dad does. And they've kind of passed that hatred down through the different generations. And so anyway, it's going to be that's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. Well, I don't know. You talk about that series versus Ole Miss. I'll take that Texas series every time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was so much excitement when Texas came to Fayetteville for the football game last September, and a lot of that I think was, they hadn't been there in a long time, but the fact they had joined the SEC a few months earlier. I got to tell you, when Texas joined the SEC, the first thing I thought of was Arkansas Texas baseball and how fun that series could be. That might be the rivalry for the Razorbacks in baseball moving forward.
Oh, I think it's going to be, without a doubt. And it's just really, it's really neat to think about it. I think about, back in the day, we kind of judged our day off of what was going on in Austin. I know Norm DeBryan, if we woke up and it's snowing here, but it's sunny in Austin and the Longhorns are outside practicing and we're stuck inside and we can't really do a whole lot. Back then we didn't have the Fowler Center or the Hunt Center. We had the Broyles Complex, which we had to share with Razorback football when it was spring football. So boy, that just ruined Norm DeBryan's day if he knew it was sunny in Austin and the weather was crappy here. So it's just kind of funny. It made for some really bad practices for us. And so I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Massage Envy has been voted the best day spa and best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. Great therapists and estheticians go along with a new service that I am truly excited about. Rapid Tension Relief uses a special tool that will melt the tension and soreness away. Trust me, you will not be disappointed in the results. I highly recommend this feature along with a total body stretch assisted stretch program. Whether you are competing at a high level or just want to relax, these services are for everyone. Massage, rapid tension relief, total body stretch, deep muscle treatment massage, you choose. Or you can try any combination of those. So the next time you're feeling tight, make sure to call my friends at Massage Envy.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
Grease Pig, this is Mike.
Coming in hot, so I can just stay in my vehicle during my oil change?
That's right. The Grease Pig wants to help keep you safe, so now you can stay in your vehicle during your oil change.
These guys are working like a pit crew.
That's part of our 17-point inspection, where we check your belts and hoses, we check and fill all your fluids, and offer full repair on all vehicles. And of course, we use Castrol products.
Why do I smell coffee?
You know our waiting room is still open.
And give up front row seats to my own oil change? No, thank you. You're doing awesome. Mike, I think I'm making them uncomfortable.
Get into the Grease Pig, your local automotive specialist for over 20 years.
Welcome back to the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. Let's take a look at the week ahead, presented by Grease Pig.
Arkansas and Stanford Saturday at 1 o'clock from Schwab Field in Omaha. The Razorbacks and the Cardinal will be on ESPN. The week ahead is brought to you by the Grease Pig. For 20 years, they have specialized serving UA students, faculty, and staff with 2 locations in Fayetteville on College Avenue and Martin Luther King Boulevard. The Grease Pig has experience for all your repair needs and, of course, complete service oil changes staffed with ASE certified master technicians. They also provide tires and alignment services at their location on College Avenue. The Grease Pig, it's all about taking care of you, and a proud supporter of the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. Mentioned Arkansas is going to play Stanford on Saturday. They'll play Monday. The time Monday will be determined by the outcome Saturday. If they win on Saturday, they'll play the game Monday night. They'll be guaranteed to play at least one more game. If they lose on Saturday, they would play in an elimination game Monday afternoon against the loser of the Ole Miss and Auburn game, which will follow them Saturday night here in Omaha. Let's kind of look back. Arkansas's played all 3 of these teams this year that they could potentially see in pool play here in Omaha. They lost to Stanford 5-0 in Round Rock, Texas on February the 27th. That was part of the Round Rock Classic. They beat Ole Miss 2 of 3 games in Fayetteville, lost game 1 to the Rebels, but came back and won games 2 and 3. The next week they went to Auburn, had the big comeback in game 1. They were down 5-0, I think, in the 5th inning of that game, ended up winning it 11-8. Lost to Auburn on day 2. Auburn scored a couple of late runs to win that one. And then Arkansas was really in control most of the game in the finale at Auburn and won that series. And we thought at the time that was a big series win for Arkansas, Bubba. And, time has really proven us right that beating Auburn on its home field was really a feather in the cap for the Razorbacks this year.
Yeah, it was a big win. I remember Dave talking about how good Auburn was early in the year, and then you and I talked about how, their offense is really good. I mean, they top to bottom, they can hit the ball, they can jump on you early, they've got power, they've got a little bit of speed, they can do a little bit of everything. So yeah, that was a huge going in there. That's when I really said this team. That's when we thought everything was coming together, and then that was kind of when we clicked early on, and then we kind of faltered after that and fell off a little bit. But yeah, that was a huge win for us.
It was 3 straight weekends. They played Texas A&M in College Station. They played Ole Miss in Fayetteville, and they played at Auburn. And they didn't win, just a ton of games in there. I think they might have been one game over 500 over those 3 series, and you count Vanderbilt the week after that. But those 4 series, I thought, I was seeing a lot of improvement from Arkansas, even if it didn't show up in the win-loss column all the time. It just seemed like there was a lot of growth in the program during that time. And I thought Nate Thompson made a great comment somewhere in there as I was talking to him. He basically said, all of these things that have been happening to us, even if they were negative at the time, we're trying to use them to our benefit and to learn from them and that they're going to make us stronger at the end of the year. And I really thought that 4-week stretch was really critical to the way the last couple of weeks have played out.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I say all the time, as a coach, you hate to lose, but a lot of times you learn more from a loss than you do from a win. And I look at that A&M series, and we had, there were multiple chances we had to drive runners in. We had runners at bases loaded, 1 out, or bases loaded, no out situation. We runners at third, 1 out, and we weren't able to execute. But not executing there, whether it was lack of approach or just pitch selection, whatever happened, or maybe just the pitcher making a good pitch, made us better as we've gone on through the year. And you can see some of the huge at bats in Stillwater, 2 out, 2 strike RBIs. You saw the same thing in North Carolina, 2 strike, 2 out RBIs. Those are daggers to the other team. And so it really did help this lineup to go through some of those struggles in key situations. And it did make us better. So Nate Thompson, I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, it's really made us a better team, and we've learned from all those mistakes. And now we're kind of on a roll, and we just need to keep it rolling.
I feel like we know a lot more about Ole Miss and Auburn than Stanford. They played Stanford 1 game. It was a real cold, blustery day in Round Rock. It was a game where it just kind of felt like both teams just wanted to get off the field. Stanford was ready to go home. They had a flight waiting on them at the end of that game. Arkansas had to play Louisiana Lafayette later that night. They're supposed to play the day before, but because of field conditions in Round Rock, they didn't get to play that game. With Stanford, they're going to be different this time than I think what Arkansas saw earlier in the year. One of the big differences is that they started Quinn Matthews against the Razorbacks earlier this year, a left-hander. He's transitioned into their closer role. You mentioned that Arkansas is probably going to see Alex Williams on Saturday, Pac-12 Pitcher of the Year. He was a first-team All-American by Collegiate Baseball newspaper. But, with Williams, he's really not pitched real well in the postseason. He went 4 2/3 innings against Texas State, allowed 5 runs, 5 hits, 2 walks. And then when they played UConn last week, UConn, beat up on Stanford in game 1. The Cardinal had a big comeback late in that game, made it tight. But, Williams in that game, Bubba, just 1 1/3 inning, 6 runs on 7 hits. He gave up 4 doubles, gave up a home run, only threw 44 pitches. So he's probably going to be pretty rested whenever Arkansas plays him on Saturday. But, you look at the track record and you wonder what kind of pitcher Arkansas is going to see on Saturday from this, right-hander who's not your typical right-hander for a team that's in College World Series. Conor Nolan, he's a little bit of a prospect this year. I don't know that Williams is really that much of a prospect. He's running out of eligibility at the end of this season.
Right. And it's hard to say because, once again, you never know from day to day in baseball. I mean, he could come out and have a career start against us on Saturday. But yeah, he's been getting lit up a little bit. And, I said that he was Pac-12 Pitcher of the Year. He wouldn't be SEC Pitcher of the Year. I guess it's kind of unfair for me to say that. I've gone over his numbers. I haven't gone into his lefty righty splits. I haven't gone into all that. But, I don't think that he's a guy that we're really scared of. I think if we go out and we have good, solid approaches at the plate, get our pitches, and put good barrels on them, be on time, good things are going to happen if we just play Razorback baseball up and down the lineup. Now, I will say the one guy that worries me is Quinn Matthews. We don't want to get to the 7th inning down 2 and then bring Quinn Matthews in, because I think he's a tough matchup for us. He's a tough lefty. He's a guy that can go multiple innings, so I think it's real important for us to try to get a lead early and keep that lead, because we don't want to get late innings. I think they would get in a situation if they had to go with 3 or 4 innings with Quinn Matthews. I think they could do it. And, we don't want to get, not that we're scared of Quinn Matthews. The guy's really, he's a good pitcher. I think he's a way tougher matchup for our lineup than Alex Williams is.
He only allows about 6 hits per 9 innings. That's one of the really one of the best clips in college baseball this year. The thing with Matthews, he threw a lot of pitches against UConn, had a 3-inning save at the end of game 3 against the Huskies. Also had a save at the end of game 2. He's thrown 96 1/3 innings. You talk about, just how fresh an arm is, because it's going to be a fairly quick turnaround. He's got 5 days of rest before he'll pitch on Saturday, but he's thrown a lot because he started the season out as a starting pitcher. and now he's transitioned into a reliever that will, pitch long for him. You wonder about his arm freshness and what that'll be like on Saturday.
Yeah, that's true. They could be a factor. And I mean, that's a lot of innings to throw late in the year. And it really can have there's some wear and tear on an arm when you get this time of year into June. And so we'll see how that affects things. I don't know how much they would stretch him out, because they did use him just to get to Omaha. They had to use him a lot, but he came up big for them.
Cardinal, they've got a pretty good bullpen. They rank in the top 20 nationally in ERA. They're in the top 20 at WHIP, fewest hits per game. One of the best teams in the country in terms of shutout. They've shut out 9 teams this year. They've got a couple of guys who will come in the middle of the game. Braden Montgomery being one of them. Really some two-way players. Montgomery also hits for them. Anyway, they've got a pretty strong bullpen. I think the thing that stands out to me about Stanford, Bubba, is the fact that they hit for power really well. They've got 117 home runs this year. I think they've hit something like 18 home runs just in the postseason. No, I'm sorry, 21 home runs in 8 postseason games. Now, all of those have been at their home ballpark, and we know full and well how big this ballpark here in Omaha plays. But it's a team that's shown a lot of power. And then the player who really stands out to me, and I remember him well from watching him this year when Arkansas played them in Round Rock. I remember watching him last year in the postseason, had a great postseason, is Brock Jones, a really great center fielder for them. He comes into this. He's got a 329 batting average, an OPS of 1134, 20 home runs, 13 doubles, 5 triples, and he also ranks 12th nationally with 54 walks, steals bases. He's stolen 15 bases this year. Just one of the best all-around players that I think Arkansas will have seen to this point in the postseason. We talked about Vance Honeycutt at North Carolina. Jones is a big-time prospect in this year's draft. It might be what we're talking about Honeycutt in a year or two.
Hey, you're right. And the thing is, what's going to make this lineup tough is it's tough to maneuver it, because they're good up and down the lineup. Some of these lineups are top heavy, and these guys are pretty solid. It's similar to a Razorback lineup where guys at the top or the bottom can hurt you. Now, there's certain guys that you want to try to avoid in key situations, Brock Jones being one of them, but they do have multiple guys in that lineup that can hurt you. And I think you take a lot of those home runs are not going to be home runs. A lot of the ones they hit in the Super Regional are not going to be home runs at Charles Schwab Stadium. It's just a different, it's just a different field. It's a different stadium. It's big. A lot of those balls are killed in the gap, or they're caught for outs. And so, I think that helps us a little bit there, but they are a pretty good lineup up and down. They hit 310, 311 as a team.
Yeah.
So that's the part that makes them really dangerous on base percentage team wise. So I mean, we know they're going to be a good team. They're getting on base. Their on base percentage. I look at how much the team strikes out, how much they get on base, their on base percentage. I want to know, are they a swing and miss team? Or are they a team that's a patient team, works the count? Like a Notre Dame team does a really good job of working the count, getting pitches, working and getting into the bullpen. So I think we're able to maneuver this lineup. I think if they're aggressive early against Conor Nolan, I think that plays right into Conor's strength, because he's able to throw strikes. And I do think they're going to be aggressive against him, just like North Carolina was. They swung, I don't know how many first pitches they swung at, but they swung at a ton of first pitches. They're up there aggressive because they know Conor Nolan's going to be around the plate.
Stanford's got a 540 slugging percentage. They've got 131 doubles and 18 triples this year. So they're not just a home run hitting team. They've got a really talented lineup. Some of the other players who I've got written down here who've stood out to me, Carter Graham was a 3rd-team All-American. He's got 22 home runs and 77 RBI. He's got a 335 batting average, Bubba, and that's not even the best batting average on the team. Braden Montgomery, I mentioned him a minute ago. He's got 18 home runs. Tommy Troy bats 333. Brett Barea bats 352. Like you're mentioning, this is just a team that can really hit up and down the lineup. Stanford's got Omaha experience. They were here last year. We talked about this earlier in the season when Arkansas played them in Round Rock. They were almost in Vanderbilt's shoes and got to, walk into the national championship series last year. They had Vanderbilt on the ropes. We're beating them 5-4, nobody on, bottom of the 9th, 2 outs. And Vanderbilt gets on after, just a parade of issues for Stanford. I think there was a throwing error in there. There was a walk or maybe a hit batter. And then Stanford's closer throws a couple of wild pitches that allows Vanderbilt to score the winning runs, and Vanderbilt wins that game 6-5 in an elimination game. And like 2 days later, Vanderbilt gets its ticket punched to the championship series because North Carolina State has the COVID problem. But this is a Stanford team that, much like Arkansas and what happened with NC State last year, Stanford probably still very upset about the way that their season ended at the College World Series. And they got a lot of players back from that team. They've got a head coach, David Esker, who's coached 3 teams to the College World Series. So there's probably some motivation there for Stanford too.
I think so. And if you look at how Stanford advanced to the Super Regional, they had to beat Texas State. They were trailing. I want to say it was 3-1 in the 9th, and they hit a couple home runs. Coming back to win that game, or
right.
they wouldn't even be in Omaha. So they've played several.
They played 5 elimination games in this postseason. 5-0.
There you go. So 5 of them. So they're used to their backs being against the wall. They're a good team. And I think it's a big challenge for us, and we all know how important this first game is. But I really like the matchup, and once again, I'm not gonna poo-poo on Pac-12, but I look at a lot of these numbers of these hitters, and I try to superimpose them into SEC. What if they were facing the SEC pitching week in and week out? What would these numbers be? And look, Brock Jones is a great player. Carter Graham, he's got a lot of power. I just wonder how good those numbers would be if we put them in the SEC, and just that's kind of the way I compare stuff all the time. I judge everything off of that, and so we'll see what we got. But hey, Conor Nolan's a different animal than what they're used to seeing, and so I like the matchup.
I think it was Oregon State in 2018. They had to come out of the losers bracket quite a bit, whether it be in their regional or here at the College World Series, and they were a team that was used to playing with their backs against the wall, like you were just talking about. Sometimes I think it can take it out of a team. It just really depends on the team. And so I'm interested to see Stanford when they come in Saturday. Are they a team that looks a little fatigued because they've, gone through this, meat grinder of a schedule here in the postseason? Or are they a team that, maybe they challenge that or they embrace that? I don't know. I think it really depends on the team, and I'll be interested to see that from Stanford. Real quick, we talked about the ballpark, how big it is. Does the way this ballpark play, do you think it hurts Arkansas? Does it help them? And I'm talking about from a pitching perspective and from a hitting perspective.
Well, I think if you'd asked me that 3 weeks ago, I would have said it hurt Arkansas. But now, I'm watching some of the at-bats we're having. I'm watching Brady Slavens be a lot more disciplined hitter. He's taking balls back up the middle. It doesn't look like he's trying to hit a 3-run jack on every swing. I think he's kind of transformed. And, one of the things that I say constantly is good hitters are judged by what they don't swing at. Brady's taken a lot more pitches since he's moved up into that 2-hole. He's a lot more disciplined hitter. I think we're spraying the ball around the field a lot better than we did early in the year. I think we're a little one-dimensional early in the year. I think Nate Thompson, Bobby Wernick, they've done a great job. Colin Smith, with the hitters, it's just trying to get them to hey, take advantage of that pitcher's mistake. Stay on the ball and drive it. I call it keeping your nose on the ball and driving it the other way. But then if a pitcher makes a mistake, hammer it and try to be on time. I see us early in the year, it seemed like we were caught in between a lot, late on fastballs, early on off speeds. I see us more on time these last few weeks, and I really like that. So I think this bigger ballpark, I don't think it affects us as much as it does Stanford. And then from a pitching standpoint, I think it helps us. I really do. Now, Conor Nolan's more of a ground ball guy. He's not giving up a ton of fly balls, so it doesn't matter for him. But for some of the other guys in there, and kind of the same with Will McIntyre, he doesn't give up a ton of fly balls. But some of the other guys, I think this ballpark helps. We play great defense, and so I think it really benefits us to be at Charles Schwab Stadium.
As funny as it sounds, you hear defensive players talk about good dirt, good grass. This is one of the more pristine fields that they're going to play on all year.
Oh, absolutely. And, I love our defense. You can look, we had Zach Gregory in left, Chris Lanzilli in right. Neither one of them are speed burners out there, but they're both good outfielders. They get good jumps. I think our scouting report's really good. I think we do a good job of shifting. Braden Webb is a great center fielder because it covers a lot of ground. And then we know what our infield defense is. And then Michael Turner behind the plate, really good behind the plate. And so I like where we're at, Matt.
And most days in Omaha, you get days between your games. Now, when you get into the championship series, it's a best of 3 over 3 days. But in this first part, it's like a regional in the format, Bubba, but you get those days in between, which I think can really help your bullpen.
Well, okay, so I was talking yesterday, and we don't want to put too much emphasis on this first game, but we all know how important it is. If we win this first game, we're set up perfect for the Omaha format to win the whole thing as long as we win. And I know that sounds like master of the obvious, but it's just the way our bullpen is with, you got Hagen Smith, Brady Tigers, Zach Morris, Evan Taylor, Cole Ramage, throw him in there. You got so many guys. If we could keep those guys fresh, our starters don't have to be great. They can almost be openers. They give us 3 or 4 innings, boom, we go to these guys and we finish out the game. Then they've got a day of rest, and then we do it again the next day. Will McIntyre starts. Doesn't have to be great. Give us 3 innings, give us 4, whatever you got. Empty out the tank. And then these guys are reloaded again, ready to go. And I left Zebulon out. Zeb can come in for an inning and throw gas and throw that splitter up there and get some outs. And so, man, I just really like it. But if you lose this first one and drop into the losers bracket, then all of a sudden we got to have a big start from a Jackson Wiggins, a Zach Morris. And I don't even know if I mentioned Zach Morris. If I left him out, I'm sorry. I think I threw him in the relievers comment, but
you did.
We got to have a big start from one of those guys. I think Jackson Wiggins, if we drop in the losers bracket, we need Jackson to go out there and shove it one game and give us some good innings to eat up some innings. And then I think we'll be in good shape. But I think the key is just winning this first one, staying in that winner's bracket. And man, I love where we're at because I love the fight in this team. I really do. They showed it in Stillwater. They really did. They showed it in all the rain delays and just the adversity in North Carolina. Not a huge crowd, but it was a vocal crowd, a loud crowd. But they really showed me their backbone when they were in Stillwater. I mean, a lot of things. There were a lot of reasons why they could have just laid down on Monday, but they bowed their neck, pitching and hitting wise. They came out and just and won that game on Monday and just showed me what this team's made of.
In Stillwater, we saw Zach Morris pitch in relief and then come back on 2 days rest and start, and had a pretty good start, and probably could have gone a little bit deeper into that game, but they had so many arms that they didn't want to overuse people in game or in the final game in Stillwater. They wanted to get other pitchers in there who had some innings left in their arms. And so, to your point, that could potentially play well for Zach Morris, because I think that, when you hear Dave Van Horn talk last week about, we were thinking about starting a right-hander, Will McIntyre, or a left-hander, and he never said who the left-hander was. I think, most people believe that left-hander was going to be Zach Morris. And so I think they like him in a starter role, or maybe more of an opener role, as you've said it, based on the way that he pitched in Stillwater in the first ever start of his career, at least collegiately. It's all about winning the first game. That's so huge. And, final thought here is that I think Conor Nolan has refound himself in terms of where he was in the middle of the season. I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the podcast, but there, really for the first 6 or 7 weeks of this season, Bubba, when Conor threw, you felt like Arkansas was going to win. And I think that's what gives you a lot of confidence on Saturday, is the fact that he's going to be on the mound. And not only is he going to be on the mound, he started here at the College World Series. Now, Alex Williams has too, but I think a lot of people forget that Conor Nolan started a game here at the College World Series, his true freshman season, when they played Texas Tech. I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed by this moment.
No, he's not at all. He's the guy I want. I want the ball in his hand game one, without a doubt. And, we talk all the time about how a team takes on the personality of their head coach. They also take on the personality of their starting pitcher. And I think this team just plays a little tougher when Conor Nolan's on the mound. There's just something about that combination. You see him take line drives off his body, boom, gets the ball and throws the first, doesn't even rub it. I mean, it's just, he brings a certain toughness to me that says Razorback baseball, has Razorback baseball written all over it. I love the kid out there on the mound. I love the way he competes. Win or lose, he's going to compete his butt off. But I just think the team takes on his personality on the days that he starts. And boy, I can't wait for Saturday to get here.
Heard it mentioned that he played quarterback behind a Chad Morris offensive line, so a line drive probably isn't going to hurt too bad.
Good point. He's been hit way harder than that multiple times.
He certainly has. Come to WholeHogSports.com this week for all of our coverage here from Omaha. I'm here. Tom Murphy's here. We've got plenty of coverage planned from the College World Series. You can hear Bubba with Phil Elson on the Razorback Sports Network Saturday. Their pregame show will start at 12:30 Saturday afternoon for a 1 o'clock first pitch. But we're going to have plenty of coverage at Whole Hog Sports even before the Razorbacks take on the Cardinal here in Omaha. We'll be back with another podcast next week, and we'll either be talking about the National Championship Series that Arkansas would be playing in, or we'll be recapping the season. And we appreciate you being with us all year on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. Hope you enjoyed watching the games, and we'll see you again next week.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.